Welcome back to Split Decision Quarantine Edition with Gerald and I, each in our respective homes. We're here to cover this weekend's UFC 249 fight card. The UFC is coming back under incredibly limited circumstances in the great state of Florida, who does not give a shit what is happening with the rest of the country. And so they're opening back up. The UFC is putting on an event with no crowd, no nothing. But nonetheless, it's, with how many fight cards got canceled and nothing for the foreseeable, limited fight cards for the foreseeable future, this fight card is stacked, dude. This is probably the best fight card in a year or two. It's amazing how many big name fights are on this card,
Yeah.
I mean, we have former champs and title contenders on the undercard. Showtime Pettis, Anthony Pettis, and Cowboy are on the freaking undercard. And every fight from the undercard to the main card has at least one person who has either held or challenged for a title in it. So, I mean, just a ton of names.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. But it's not unexpected. It's the first fight card. Actually, it's the first sporting event since the COVID-19, outbreak. So, I mean, all eyes are going to be on this. You're going to pull out your big guns for this. I foresee this probably being the most watched UFC program probably in recent history.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is due to the circumstances, but
yes.
Dude, I mean, just looking at the names on this fight card, like, you're a casual observer.
Yeah.
And at least one name in every fight I have listed on this docket for today, and that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a hell of a fight card. And that being said, referencing our last video, I'm so bummed that we're not getting Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. But
yeah,
fingers crossed.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
I don't think Gaethje lose, but I'm crossing my fingers that he does so that I can see Ferguson Khabib.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's get down to it. Let's start with the undercard. You got Uriah Hall versus Jacare Souza.
Yeah, Jacare Souza, yeah.
Super, yeah.
So, I mean, this is a middleweight fight, and it's, Jacare Souza, who has been up towards the top fighting for titles before and has lost his last few fights, versus Uriah Hall, who was a runner-up in an Ultimate Fighter season to Kelvin Gastelum, who was recently fought for the title. And, this one is relatively cut and dry for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Uriah Hall is an incredibly diverse and accurate and powerful striker. And Jacare Souza, while he does have a lot of power in his hands and has much improved striking over his career, is one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners in the game, especially in that division. Yeah. And so for me and for a lot of people, it's kind of cut and dry. Like, if it stays standing, chances are Uriah Hall is going to pick apart Jacare and land that big shot eventually. But if it goes to the ground, Uriah Hall's probably out of his depth with somebody like Jacare. Jacare is he's a shark, man. His nickname, I think, is like the alligator. That's why he does his whole thing every time he comes out to fight.
Yeah. So next up, we do have Carla Esparza versus Michelle, the Karate Hottie Watterson, women's strawweight. Now, Esparza, a powerful wrestler in grinding game, and of course, Watterson, great long-range striker, and obviously it's in the name, so we know what she can do.
Yeah, and this is kind of like that last fight, Carla Esparza is, by the way, the inaugural women's strawweight champion of the UFC. She won it by winning a season of The Ultimate Fighter. I believe she beat Rose Namajunas in the finale, who would later go on to beat the woman that beat Carla Esparza. So Carla Esparza wins the title, then Ioana Jędrzejczyk comes out and beats the holy hell out of Carla Esparza, and then Rose Namajunas comes out and beats Ioana twice. Anyway, that's completely beside the point. Carla Esparza is probably the second best wrestler in that division. I think the only woman who is a better wrestler than Carla Esparza in that division is Tatiana Suarez. And so Carla Esparza has, while her striking is not great,
Mhm.
She puts a lot of pressure on people. She leans on people on the fence a lot. She gets a lot of takedowns. Like she smothers people. She grinds people out. Just like
Yeah.
that's what is said about a lot of wrestlers. They just grind. They grind you into the mat. They grind you into the fence. They just drag you down and just run you through sandpaper.
Yeah.
That being said, Michelle Waterson is a phenomenal striker. She's one of the best strikers in the division. I think, there's only a few women that I would put ahead of her, but she's a really, really good long-distance striker. She has a lot of really varied kicks. She really loves those real quick karate, like side kicks to keep people at distance. So if Michelle Waterson is able to use her kicks to keep Carla Esparza at range and then land punches as a counter striker, like she likes to, as Carla Esparza tries to close the distance to get that wrestling game in, then I think Michelle Waterson can win. I think it's a question of, I think it's probably a decision, but I think it's a question of, does Michelle Waterson keep it standing and keep Esparza at range, or does Esparza get in, get her against the fence, kind of grind out the win wrestling style? I don't think either one of them is going to get a TKO finish.
Yeah.
That being said, Waterson has a great submission game, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities. It's just not likely with a grappler at the caliber of Carla Esparza.
All right. So next up, we have Alexei Olenek versus Fabricio Werdum.
Fabricio Werdum.
I
back.
butchered that name.
That's all right. I'm just glad he's back, man. Fabricio Werdum is on my list of the greatest heavyweights of all time, just based on his resume, man. He has wins over Cain Velasquez, over Fedor Emelianenko, over like a ton of guys, man. He's a monster. And for a guy like Alexei Olenek, whose kind of bread and butter is choking people, going up against the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in your division is a bad matchup, especially when that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter is as good at striking as Fabricio Werdum. Fabricio Werdum really, by the time he got to the UFC, after running the gamut in Strikeforce, had really rounded out his game. His striking is great. He studied under Rafael Cordeiro, who is the coach that opened Shoot to Box, which is famous for bringing up fighters such as Anderson Silva, Cyborg, Shogun Hua, and a ton of other names, like big legendary names of the sport. And so Fabricio, also, fun point, he's currently training Mike Tyson for –
Really?
Yeah, Mike Tyson wants to do an exhibition match for charity. So Rafael Cordeiro is currently training Mike Tyson and said that the first time Mike Tyson threw a right hand at one of his pads, Rafael Cordeiro saw all of his family flash before his eyes.
Oh, my God.
Of like, oh, shit. And if you haven't seen a picture of Mike Tyson lately, look it up.
Yeah, I actually saw a meme earlier, and it showed, like, how he looked, I guess, about a few years ago and how he looks now. I'm like, geez, look like you go out there and win the heavyweight title.
Dude, he's trying. I mean, he hasn't lost a beat.
I'm impressed.
Anyway, back to this fight. So Alexei Olenek is a phenomenal submission grappler. He has most of his wins, and which is crazy. To look at somebody's MMA resume that's not a Brazilian, basically, and see that almost all of their wins are by choke or submission is wild. But also to look at somebody's resume and see that almost every choke is Ezekiel choke, which is a really uncommon one to get because most people are pretty good at defending that, is pretty wild. That being said, this is a real bad matchup for somebody whose bread and butter is a choke. You're going against the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in the game, and he is for sure a better striker than you. So, it's a bad matchup for Olenek, but I'm really excited to see what happens in this fight, partially just because I'm excited to see Werdum back in the game, bro.
Yeah.
One of the greatest of all time.
Well, this will be a great warm-up match to get him back in the fold. So, we'll see what happens. Next up, we have Anthony Pettis versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Again, familiar names. Like, this is insane. Both of these guys are favorites. You can't lose.
Yeah, dude, it's the main event of the undercard, which isn't really a thing, but what he typically does is they put a real exciting fight at the end of the undercard because they figure if people are flipping through and they see something exciting, and then the ad rolls through of buy the pay-per-view, they're more likely to do it.
Yeah.
I guess it's true. But goddamn, is this a great fight, man.
Oh, yeah.
Rematch of a former fight. I think it was Cerrone challenging for the title when Anthony Pettis was the lightweight title holder. I think it's Pettis' only defense or one of maybe two. And he liver kicked the shit out of Donald Cerrone. Kicked him, just body kicked, and Cerrone just couldn't take it. And folded and it's a great finish. But dude, these two guys are fan favorites for sure, man. And they're both kind of seemingly on the end of their careers. They both have their ups and downs. They both beat top-level talent. They've both lost to guys that you wouldn't expect them to lose to. But they're both phenomenally well-rounded. They're both phenomenally exciting. And, they're two of those guys who will go down in history in almost everybody's books as two of the best fighters to compete, or I guess Pettis did win a title, but Cerrone is in almost everybody's books as one of those fighters who's one of the best fighters to compete to never win a title. You know what I mean? And I think that unfortunately that's going to be his legacy. But at this point, they're both fan favorites. They both put on exciting fights. They both take on all comers. Cerrone is particularly infamous for taking short notice fights, which he's kind of doing in this situation. They've both improved a lot, I think, since their first fight. I think that both of them have gotten a lot smarter in their game plans. I think Cerrone is a little better defensively, and I think Pettis has kind of tightened up his game a little bit. He was a little wilder when he was younger, which was part of the appeal and part of why he was so successful when he was younger. Yeah. But I think he kind of lost focus a little bit. And I think these days, without the pressure of him being a young, up-and-coming contender hunting for a title, I think that Anthony Pettis has kind of settled into who he really is and kind of just settled into who he is as a fighter. And he's really fun to watch right now. And so is Cerrone. So I don't know who's going to win this fight. I don't care who wins this fight. I mean, I do. I'll be bummed if either guy for either guy who loses. Yeah. I don't want one to lose. I love them both. I've been watching both of them for years. But it's a fun fight nonetheless. And it's definitely a fan pleaser.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's definitely a bait and trap match. You're going through, and all of a sudden, oh, let's see this. Next, it's the gateway to the main card, which we will talk about.
Yeah,
we're starting out with,
almost no time in history would you be flipping through cable and on the undercard see either one of those dudes. That doesn't happen.
Never.
It's a great marketing move.
It is. And, walking into the main card, you start off with Greg Hardy versus Yorgan De Castro, a heavyweight match, two heavy strikers. Somebody's going night-night.
Yep. Somebody's going night-night. And I don't know who it is. They're two up-and-coming guys. They're both kind of unproven. They both have phenomenal victories in the UFC, spectacular knockouts. That being said, I know who I would like to win just because of the other guy's history. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I don't have much to say about this one outside of it should be a fun, a spectacular finish and a fun fight. But I'm still kind of iffy on the Greg Hardy train. He's a phenomenal athlete and good for him. And if he wins, I think what'll happen for either one of these guys, what's going to happen next is they will get thrown to the top of the division. This is the fight that kind of puts them into the top tier talent. Greg Hardy's had a few fights in the UFC already, and both of these guys have had a few fights, and they're both kind of knocking at that door of hitting those named opponents. Yeah. And so I think after this comes the real test. So whichever guy wins this fight is going to get some real tests coming up. They're going to start hitting the top 15. maybe top 10 of the division, starting getting those named opponents, and that's where we're really going to see what they're made of. And that's kind of what a lot of people have been waiting for Greg Hardy. You know, he's a phenomenal athlete, as we all know. He's in the NFL. And we kind of been waiting to see whether he's been, you know, swimming in the UFC based on his athletic ability, or whether he's going to sink based on his lack of fight experience when he gets to the top of that division. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, right now, like, he's off to a good start. I mean, obviously for me, a familiar name, you know, watching the NFL. I mean, to be able to transition from football to UFC does say a lot about, I think, not only his physical strength, but his mental strength. Because, again, you do have a little bit of a learning curve, you know, being that you played football your whole life. Probably you didn't do much fighting your whole life outside of maybe, well, we know what you've done. But in terms of professional fighting, not much experience there. So, I mean, it's kind of cool to see it, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and there's guys that have made that transition, and some of them have been relatively successful. You know, like you look at your Eric Anders, who's still fighting the UFC right now. I think his last fight was at light heavyweight, but he was on a championship Alabama team.
Wow.
At the collegiate level. So, you know, he didn't make it to the NFL, but he's at the highest of the high level of collegiate football, and didn't make it to the NFL, so he transferred over to UFC, and he's doing relatively well. You know, he's fought some of the biggest names in the middleweight division. He's now fighting some of the biggest names in the light heavyweight division. You get your Brendan Schaub, who made it and got, you know, as he says it, he had coffee with the Vikings. He didn't get drafted. He was at the highest level of and you know, Brock Lesnar played on the Vikings.
Yep.
Few people, but you know, like I said, I part of me thinks that Greg Hardy's athleticism, as you know, just a phenomenal athlete, has carried him as far as he is, and a lot of people have been really interested to see what happens when he hits the highest of the high level. You know, because at a certain point, the athleticism is going to be drastically outweighed by the years and years of practice and the skills of the guys at the top of that division. I don't think Greg Hardy's ever going to sniff a title.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens, you know, and this fight is stepping stone for it. And we don't even know if Greg Hardy's going to win, you know.
Yeah, we don't know. It's still up in the air. There's still a match to be fought.
Just like this.
Yeah.
And Greg Hardy ain't sniffing anything for a while. He's going to have a broken nose.
Well, so next up we have Jeremy Stephens versus Calvin Kattar, a featherweight matchup, and which you have said might be your match of the night. Tell us why, man.
Dude, I think this is a potential fight of the night. Just because both these guys are just dudes that like to walk forward and just throw down. Jeremy Stephens is an insanely exciting fighter to watch. He's fought all the way from 170 down to 145. I think he's at right now, featherweight. So he spanned 3 weight divisions and holds knockouts in every weight division.
How?
Normally, you see guys who switch divisions and the power doesn't quite translate, whether they're going up or down. You know, if they go down, they have to lose muscle mass and body weight, so the power doesn't quite follow. If they go up, they're facing bigger guys who aren't as susceptible to that power as the guys they were fighting before. But Jeremy Stephens is – every division he's been in has been one of the hardest punchers in that division, which is insane. So he's also a phenomenal striker who trains under Eric Del Fierro with Dominic Cruz. And his game has just gotten better and better and better and better. He's kind of been a brawler his whole career and just kind of a wild man. But he's so fun to watch because of that. Calvin Kattar is one of those guys that's been coming up in the division over the past couple of years. Representative from Boston, I think, or from Massachusetts at the very least. He is a longer range fighter and I think is probably a better like technical boxer, but doesn't quite have that same power. But he does kind of fight that same style of just pressure and moving forward and just throwing caution to the wind. So this fight, I have no idea who's going to win. I think Jeremy Stephens has a better shot at your one-punch knockout, but it should be a super competitive fight, and whatever happens, it's going to be just pure action. The only other fight I think that challenges this one for the fight of the night is the main event.
Wow.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Well, we'll definitely be covering that one and this one in the recap, obviously. So I'm looking forward to that one. Next up, though, you have Francis Ngannou versus yes, I can't even pronounce that.
Jairzinho Rozenstruik.
Rozenstruik, yeah, we practiced this too. But
So,
another.
So I don't know if you remember, not too long ago, I showed you a picture of Alistair Overeem.
Yeah.
With his lip detached from his head from about here to here.
Yep, I remember.
Rozenstruik's the guy that did that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So two of the most devastating strikers in the heavyweight division, right? Francis Ngannou, who we all know.
Yeah.
Alistair Overeem into a Pez dispenser. He knocked out Cain Velasquez. He's knocked out everybody he's fought with the exception of Stipe Miocic, basically. And he's fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's one of the most credentialed kickboxers in the heavyweight division, save probably Alistair Overeem, who he beat. You know, the question for me here is, I mean, how do you judge this going in, right? Do you look at they both beat Alistair Overeem.
Mm-hmm.
Francis Ngannou landed the uppercut from hell on Overeem and turned him into a Pez dispenser. And then Overeem beat Jairzinho Rozenstruik for about 98% of the fight. Literally in the last 3 seconds of the fight, Rozenstruik landed a leaping right hook.
Jeez.
On Overeem, exploded his face, dropped him, and the ref called the fight.
Wow.
Alistair Overeem also popped right back up and started moving around the cage. So if the ref hadn't stopped the fight, the question is, would the fight be over? Because it didn't seem like Overeem was totally incapacitated and incapable of defending himself. But who knows? If they had seen that injury, they definitely would have stopped the fight. But chances are, in the last 3 seconds of the fight, they wouldn't have had enough time to see that injury or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's two of the most devastating strikers in the division. Rozenstruik is a better fighter than what I just described makes him out to be. He's a phenomenal kickboxer with an incredibly pedigreed career in kickboxing. So when you look at him fighting another powerful striker in the heavyweight division, you have to say, he has countless fights in kickboxing. He's seen somebody similar to Francis Ngannou before.
Yeah. Yep.
With museum, but he's probably seen someone with a similar style, so he probably knows how to deal with it on some level.
Yeah.
That being, and he has a lot of really great weapons. He has a really good high kick. He has a really good check hook. He obviously has a really good leaping hook to kind of move forward. But Francis Ngannou is just so powerful with all of his strikes that it's hard to bet against him against anybody.
Yeah.
He's that dude that any punch he lands can put you out cold. And I think he's also the faster fighter. He's the bigger fighter in this instance, and I think he's also faster than Rozenstruik. So, I think he doesn't have as diverse of a striking game as Rozenstruik. So I think that if Rozenstruik is able to throw a lot of kicks and kind of mix it up and confuse Ngannou, he can land a shot. But I think chances are Francis Ngannou is going to land that big shot. He's a bigger guy. He's quicker. He's more powerful with his punches. I think Francis Ngannou, it's only a matter of time before he wins that title, just due to devastatingly punching people's heads off their bodies.
Yeah. So we're going to move into the last two fights of the night. We had the Bantamweight Championship. Henry Cejudo defending against Dominic Cruz. Cejudo, the double champ, flyweight and bantamweight, Olympic gold medalist, has beat Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson and TJ Dillashaw. His history speaks for itself.
Pretty much. I mean, it's you don't get much more credentialed than Henry Cejudo.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would say is on par with what Henry Cejudo has done is defending your title, let's say 7 times for shits and giggles, because that's how many times Dominic Cruz defended it.
Wow.
Dominic Cruz won and defended his title at the highest level of MMA in the UFC 7 times.
Jeez.
That's up there. I mean, there's very few people who have done that. You got like Dominic Cruz, Mighty Mouse, Anderson Silva, GSP, and John Jones. That's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got maybe Ronda Rousey and Joanna and JJ. 7 people, maybe. In the, 30-year history of the UFC and even longer than that in MMA history at this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a hell of a fight, man. I think it's a really good fight. And I don't think Henry Cejudo is going to knock out Dominic Cruz like he did TJ Dillashaw. I think TJ Dillashaw is a little more aggressive of a fighter, a little less movement than Dominic Cruz. TJ Dillashaw is kind of like a slightly more Muay Thai refined style of Dominic Cruz, because I think what happened is TJ Dillashaw spent so much time emulating Dominic Cruz that he started to incorporate some of that footwork in. And then he also teamed up with, Dwayne Ludwig and Bang Muay Thai, who just incorporate a ton of footwork, and they're phenomenal. And not trying to take anything away from TJ Dillashaw or downplay his style or accomplishments. He's phenomenal, and it's very debatable on who won that fight between Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw. But I think Dominic Cruz has a style that Henry Cejudo has not seen before. I mean, that's true for both of these guys, but Dominic Cruz has 2 losses on his resume. One of those is to Uriah Faber, which was a submission loss, I think, in the WEC. And the second of which is his last fight against Cody Garbrandt. So I think in the last fight against Cody Garbrandt, Dominic Cruz was not prepared for the way that Cody Garbrandt tried to fight him, or did fight him, I guess. Yeah. It was incredibly, Garbrandt, instead of being the aggressive fighter that Dominic Cruz thought he was going to be, just counter-struck the whole time. And I think he was very unprepared for that. And I think it was a real eye-opener for Dominic Cruz. And Dominic Cruz being one of those guys he's one of the smartest fighters in the game. But, he's an analyst outside of fighting. Mm-hmm. He's a desk analyst for all the fights recently, basically. And I think that he's going to make a ton of adjustments. And I think that his style presents something that's incredibly difficult to deal with. Henry Cejudo has a very, very well-rounded game, particularly since he's up to his striking game. He lost to Demetrius Johnson once in a striking exchange, and after that he kind of revamped his whole striking game and came back looking completely different. He had a wider stance, he was more centered, he left in and out of striking distance much more quickly, and I think it was a total overhaul of his game. But I think that his wrestling is not going to make that much of a difference compared to Dominic Cruz's footwork, and I think that Dominic Cruz is going to be he's going to be too elusive for Henry Cejudo in this instance. I think he's going to come in. I think it's going to look much like almost every Dominic Cruz fight has looked like for the past few years, where Dominic Cruz is just not there. His footwork is too good. His head movement's too good. His body movement's too good. I think that, Henry Cejudo doesn't have diverse striking game and enough footwork to kind of compensate for the amount of movement that Dominic Cruz is going to present him with. Dominic Cruz never once very long. And Henry Cejudo hasn't fought a ton of guys who are going to have that much lateral movement. So I think he's going to have a real hard time dealing with it. And it's an unpopular opinion, but I think that we're going to see a Dominic Cruz victory via decision.
Wow. It's a big statement. I am going to take Cejudo, though, just to counteract virtually. But, yeah, I think Cejudo might have the upper hand. But I'm not counting out Cruz. Cruz is an amazing fighter. What he's done in his career it's amazing. So, I mean, we're looking at a great fight here. And with the main event here to follow up, the interim lightweight championship, Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. Ferguson, former interim lightweight champ, stripped for a knee injury. That sucks. Unbeaten in almost a decade. Incredibly unpredictable fighter. Very diverse, striking, an amazing fighter. And Gaethje, a former World Series of Fighting, now Professional Fighter League lightweight champion. So we got a good fight here too.
For sure. And both of these guys have a really, really good wrestling background as well. Wrestling. So it doesn't look on paper like either guy has a huge advantage in the takedown game or the grappling game.
Yeah.
I would say the one place where that differs is that Tony Ferguson's submission game, I would say, is a lot better. Gaethje typically uses his wrestling background to control people in the clinch and up against the fence and kind of do body control and distance control. And then Tony Ferguson, as he likes to say, Snapdown City is the name of his personal gym, and he thrives on people making a little mistake in the clinch or when they're going for a takedown, snapping their head, going for a choke or something along those lines. He's also got an incredibly active game when he's in the guard from the bottom or any bottom position. So I think that I don't think we're going to see much grappling here, but it's a very interesting grappling exchange. Yeah. But I think the real difference here is going to be there's three things that I really think are going to make a big difference in the stand-up game. I think the first one is the obvious one, which is Justin Gaethje's power. Justin Gaethje undeniably has that one-punch knockout power. Every single win in his UFC career has come via KO or TKO. I think he has 2 decisions on his whole record, which is like 30-plus fights. And that's the big worry for Tony Ferguson, right? And especially a guy who likes to kind of have forward pressure and fight a little dirty and has a tendency to get hit a bit. I think that's a big risk for him. But the 2 things that I think are, from Tony Ferguson's standpoint, that kind of counteract that are, A, his unpredictability. That dude is just wild. You never know what he's going to do. He throws an incredibly diverse range of strikes. He throws punches, kicks, long-range punches, in-short punches, a lot of body shots. And then the one thing that he does that I think could counteract Gaethje's power punches, and there's also one thing I'm forgetting, which is Gaethje's leg kicks, which is why I highlighted it on the document.
Yeah.
So there's 4 things, not 3. But Tony Ferguson, as Gaethje is getting closer, start throwing elbows. So Tony likes to start a punch and switch it to an elbow. He throws a lot of slicing elbows, a lot of heavy impact elbows as people are coming in because he's such a long guy. He's so lanky that in order for most people in the punching range, he can hit people with elbows. Similarly to how John Jones did to Rashad Evans. You know, he actually will use like Wing Chun techniques where he traps people's hands and then throws them up on the top. It's real wild to watch. So I think that there's those 4 aspects, right? Gaethje's power, also his leg kicks, especially since Tony likes to fight a little longer to start out, and he's had injuries to his knees before. I think Tony can nullify that by keeping the game at a longer striking range. You know, Gaethje doesn't throw your long Muay Thai style leg kicks. He likes to punch you and then throw a leg kick on the exit. So he stands a couple feet from you and throws a heavy leg kick, so it's all shin on shin instead of foot. So there's no, long range leg kicks. But I think Tony Ferguson's long range striking game Gaethje's leg kicks, Gaethje's power, and as Gaethje tries to get in, whether or not Tony Ferguson can slice his face up with those elbows, cause a lot of damage. Because a couple of Ferguson's fights have ended just via damage to the face, cosmetic damage. You know, Cerrone's whole side of his face was swollen shut, and that's what ended the fight. It wasn't necessarily a knockout. So I think the elbows, predictability from Ferguson, and the power and the leg kicks from Gaethje will really tell the difference in this fight. And if Gaethje can pressure him and control him in the clinch, it's a good move for him. But this fight is wild to me.
Yeah, this is going to be a really good matchup. I mean, you just have no idea what you're going to get. But, I mean, just talking about the card overall, just for a second, amazing. I think it's so important right now. And with what's going on, so many new UFC fans are going to come out of this because it's like, hey, I'm stuck in my house. I have nothing to watch. Oh, shit, there's live fighting on my TV. I'm going to watch that with the rest of my friends and everyone else that's bored out of their mind because there's no sports. This is an amazing moment.
It'll be on ESPN.
Yes.
Sports fans who are sitting at home not realizing there's going to be a live event on ESPN and just watching it out of fun will all of a sudden be thrown into a live event and might just buy that pay-per-view.
Yeah.
You never know. I think the UFC should have done like a discounted pay-per-view price to try to
100%.
Because there's more people who should buy it or would buy it.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're doing it, you know.
Yeah. They got to make their money somehow.
Yeah, especially using the gate.
Yeah. But no, I think this is I think it's gonna be an incredible card. You and me, we're gonna recap this next week.
For sure.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
That being said, any last thoughts?
No, I mean, dude, I'm so pumped for this card.
Yeah.
I'm so like fight starved lately, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, in that case, that does it for our episode. We have a few more videos coming this week across our channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, friends, we have live sports. Let's get excited.
Yeah, there's 2 more live UFC events in the next week, which is
awesome. But yeah, so we're going to be live tweeting about this, covering this on our Facebook page. Follow us all over. And yeah, be safe, everyone. Take care.